The King's Avatar, Chapter 1689. A Change in Situation. Audio source, wusharworldaudiobook.com. Chapter 1689, A Change in Situation. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. What is this? What just happened? Everyone watching the match suddenly heard a hoarse shout from Pan Lin. It sounded like he wanted to crawl out and grab the audience's neck to get to the bottom of this matter. Even so, no one felt like he had lost his composure, because they were all going crazy just like him. A cleric knocking down a sharpshooter. More importantly, the sharpshooter was Cloudpiercer, controlled by Josekai, Glory's #1 player in recent years. Even if that was just context, it was a powerful scene, placing him in the spotlight. Everyone knew that even if and when he wasn't a great player, even if he was considered one of the worst among Happy's rookies, what he had contributed today would be remembered for years. This scene was similar to Tyranny's assassin, Cold Seasons, from many years ago. He wasn't a particularly well-known player, but his shattering life-risking strike against One Autumn Leaf in the finals became the most breathtaking moment that year. And Wen Yi's attack wasn't anything special, but his little cold hands was a cleric. A cleric knocking down Glory's #1 player. This was more than enough for this moment to be written into the annals of Glory. Although to be accurate, Cloudpiercer hadn't been knocked down. After all, Heroic Leap wasn't a skill with a forced knockdown. Josekai hadn't been able to avoid the attack in time, but it wasn't hard for him to quick recover and avoid crashing into the ground. But whether or not he really did get knocked down wasn't important. With quick recover, Cloudpiercer would roll and then get up. In everyone's eyes, Cloudpiercer rolling on the ground was no different than Little Cold Hands sending him tumbling with a heroic leap. Apart from the staunch Samsara supporters, this moment made everyone's blood boil with excitement. But not Josekai. Many people might think of this as humiliating to him, but he had no such thoughts. No matter how weak and Wen Yi was, he was an opponent. It was just that from his skill level and his class, he should have been someone easy to deal with. But this time, this opponent had made the right decision at the right time. In that instant, he hadn't been weak at all. But it was only for an instant. Josekai still didn't think Wen Yi was much of a threat. Even when Little Cold Hands had hit him with Heroic Leap, what he had cared more about was interrupting 1-inch Ash. I need to hurry and interrupt him again. This was the more urgent matter in Josekai's mind. Roll, find the target, aim. Before Cloudpiercer even got up, Josekai had started preparing for his next attack. But he was too late. On the battlefield, only an instant was needed to make a difference. From start to finish, and Wen Yi hadn't been able to gain the upper hand on Josekai, but in that instant, he had won. He had won his team an opportunity. Qiao Yifan's 1-inch Ash had already walked to the necessary position, and had started casting a ghost boundary. If Cloudpiercer had been able to get off his shot previously, he would have been able to interrupt 1-inch Ash. But it was too late to try now. The spell was complete. The ghostly power gathered around 1-inch Ash's blade, Snow Stripe. By the time the gunshot rang, 1-inch Ash had already swung his sword. Even though the others on Samsara had their own battles to take care of, they would pay attention to the changes going on in the battlefield from time to time. Seeing that Cloudpiercer wasn't able to interrupt 1-inch Ash in time, they knew that a ghost boundary would be completed soon. Jiang Botao and Wu Qi began to retreat in haste. Ha, it's a feint. Quote. Outside of the match, Li Xuan laughed. In that instant, Li Xuan was able to tell that 1-inch Ash had hidden a little trick when he placed down the ghost boundary. Only someone like Li Xuan, Glory's #1 Phantom Demon, could have noticed it. Sure enough, the moment the tip of the blade reached the bottom of its arc, it suddenly turned. Dense ghostly energy filled with a chilly frost blossomed like a pale blue flower. Ice boundary. In the center was one autumn leaf. At the final moment, Qiao Yivan, who had originally been pointing towards empty waves and cruel silence, turned towards one autumn leaf. It wasn't that Sun Xiang hadn't noticed that Qiao Yivan was setting down a ghost boundary. It was just that Qiao Yifan's feint hadn't been so easy to see through. Only Li Xuan had been able to. When he saw the direction of the ice boundary, as well as Jiang Botao's empty waves and Wu Qi's cruel silence retreating, Sun Xiang more or less disregarded it. By the time Qiao Yivan made the change, it was too late for him to react in time. The biting cold instantly slowed one autumn leaf. Not being directly turned into an ice cube was already quite lucky. Pooh. 1-inch ash was struck by the bullet. In order to place down the ice boundary, there was no way Qiao Yivan could have dodged it. Cloud Piercer had only been just a little bit too late. It looked as if it had hit 1-inch ash before the ghost boundary had been set down. Blood spurted out from the wound, but it was meaningless. And when Yi had created an opening for Qiao Yivan, and Qiao Yivan had used it to alter the flow of the match. Dancing Rain rushed out. Sun Qiang wanted to stop her, but one autumn leaf was now too slow to catch up to her. Boom boom boom. Glory's #1 support started firing artillery shells around the battlefield. She was finally doing what she was best at, supporting. Artillery shells flew towards Jiang Botao's empty waves and Wu Qi's cruel silence. The flames from the explosions flashed in front of their eyes. When 1-inch ash turned his blade, the two realized that they had been tricked. The two hastily tried to get back, but the players on Happy weren't wooden trees. The two of them had given up their position to avoid the ghost boundary, so Happy immediately had someone occupy it. Tang Rou, Soft Mist. A battle mage fighting up close, while a launcher supported from afar. A familiar combo. Many people's thoughts immediately returned to those former days. Even though the duo hadn't been able to win the championships, the two were the greatest partners in all of Glory. Wuxia But now, one autumn leaf had become Dancing Rain's enemy. The one playing the battle mage was different. As for Sumo Chung's former partner, Yishu, he was Happy's true lead, and Happy's true core. No one dared to overlook him, whether it was the enemy players or the viewers watching. Even when the rising stars of Happy shined again and again, those familiar with Yishu would always pay attention to his each and every move. If there were no opportunities, he could create opportunities for himself. And when Yi had helped Happy win the team an opening, would Yishu keep biding his time? Would Yishu not do anything? Of course not. Tang Rou had been left to deal with Jiang Botao and Wu Qi alone. At this moment, Yishu turned fire. Gunshots rang continuously. Zhou Zekai hadn't been able to interrupt Qiao Yivan in time. When he saw Qiao Yifan's feint muddle Jiang Botao's and Wu Qi's tempo, he realized that the previous situation could no longer continue. With one autumn leaf trapped in the ice boundary, the box 1 would certainly fail. The situation had changed, which meant that he need to hurry and adjust. He need to find a new breakthrough point. As a result, Zhou Zekai set his sights on a target close to him. And when Yi's little cold hands. Ultimately, he was Happy's healer. No matter how amazing he had been previously, a cleric was someone who the team need to protect. Who knew how many strategies had been devised over the years to get to the enemy healer? Right now, Happy's healer was standing right near Cloud Piercer without anyone to protect him. let alone the fact that Josekai's sharpshooter could even fight evenly against Yishu's unspecialized in close combat. Even if he couldn't, a cleric should lose to a sharpshooter anyways. At that moment, he fired again, this time, towards Little Cold Hands. Gunshot, blood. The white robe on Little Cold Hands was dyed red. Others might think that this was a form of revenge from Josekai, but in reality, it wasn't. The enemy healer had gifted himself over, so why shouldn't he attack him? It was the rational thing to do. End chapter. The King's Avatar. Chapter 1690. The Warrior Shining Like a Shooting Star. Audio source, wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1690. The Warrior Shining Like a Shooting Star. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Whoever controlled the enemy healer, controlled the battle. These words were a common saying in Glory. The team competition revolved around attacking and defending the healer. Compared to fighting for wild bosses in the game, even more strategic and tactical complexities were involved. The difficulty of wild bosses was mainly due to the sheer number of players involved. However, on the pro stage, everything needed to be far more precise. In this team competition, both sides had taken unconventional routes. Happy chose to target Jiang Botao's empty waves. They didn't seem to show any particular attention towards Fang Minghua's laughing song. As for Samsara, their attack towards Happy's healer wasn't tactical. It was psychological. For a time, their method had been effective. However, Wen Yi was quickly brought back by Yishu. Then, he violated everything a healer should do, and brought Happy back from a disadvantage. However, the price he paid was completely exposing himself to Josekai and Cloud Pierce's dual guns. With the enemy healer sitting right there out in the open, Josekai didn't mind changing the team's original strategy of ignoring him to killing him. Strategy and tactics had to be adjusted according to the circumstances. And Wen Yi had predicted this outcome when he took the risk. He obviously tried to run, but Josekai didn't give him a chance. Once Cloud Piercer failed to interrupt 1-inch Ash, he immediately shifted his attention to Wen Yi's Little Cold Hands. As he attacked Little Cold Hands, he didn't forget to be wary of 1-inch Ash behind him. At the same time, he also checked how the rest of his team was doing. Tang Ro's Soft Mist rushed forward, ready for a 1v2. Yishu's Lord Grim pulled away and turned around. He's coming. Josekai saw everything clearly. He had predicted that Happy wasn't going to give up on their healer so easily. From the looks of it, the rescue would be coming from Happy's strongest force. If Yishu's Lord Grim got close to him, not only would Little Cold Hands be saved, his control over 1-inch Ash would drop drastically. By then, Lord Grim and 1-inch Ash would form a team, and he would be the one in a predicament. Fortunately, while Happy had sent aid for Little Cold Hands, Samsara didn't leave Josekai alone to fend for himself. Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf had been slowed by the ice boundary, but he was able to leave the ice boundary in the end. Because of Josekai's interference, Qiao Yifan's 1-inch Ash wasn't able to set up any other ghost boundaries. After walking out from the ice boundary, one autumn leaf's movements were back to normal. However, it was no longer possible for him to continue shutting down Dancing Rain. Much of the success for the Box 1 was because of Wu Qi's help. The two of them had teamed together to quickly shut down Su Mucheng. Now, Wu Qi was no longer there to help. With just Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf alone, it wasn't easy for him to seal off Su Mucheng's Dancing Rain. Su Mucheng was very experienced with these sorts of situations. Sending just one player alone to deal with her would likely end up with Su Mucheng kiting, while she continued to support the rest of the team. Sun Xiang knew how challenging it would be to face Su Mucheng, and given the present situation, he couldn't waste any more time. Charge. This time, one autumn leaf didn't target his former partner, but rather his former owner, Yishu, Lord Grimm. Sun Xiang wanted to stop Yishu from interfering with Zhou Zekai. If he could stall long enough for Zhou Zekai to finish off Happy's healer, victory was theirs. But Lord Grimm turned around and switched targets. Lord Grimm had been rushing to Little Cold Hand's aid. But as soon as he saw one autumn leaf running towards him, he immediately gave up on his original plan and ran away towards a different direction. Swish swish. Two movement skills came out in quick succession. Countless people's eyes were still on the after images left behind by Lord Grimm. However, for Fang Minghua, in front of him was the real Lord Grimm. Laughing Song had previously gone to fight against Little Cold Hands, but he had been sent flying by Little Cold Hands' charge. By the time he steadied himself, Little Cold Hands had sent Cloud Piercer tumbling along the ground. But similar to Zhou Zekai, Fang Minghua didn't let this scene cloud his judgment. He also didn't feel much threat from Little Cold Hands. The attack had indeed been impactful, though. The entire flow of the match could potentially reset. What came after was as he expected. Starting from when Cloud Piercer failed to interrupt 1-inch Ash's ice boundary, the situation changed. Su Mucheng was finally able to escape from the box 1. Jiang Botao and Wu Qi had their tempos disrupted from 1-inch Ash's feint. But the key to the match is still in our hands. Fang Minghua had also noticed Little Cold Hands. That attack had helped Happy change the situation, but at the same time, he was now a lamb in a tiger's den. Whoever controlled the enemy healer, controlled the battle. Fang Minghua trusted that Zhou Zekai wouldn't forget such a critical point in the heat of the moment. Even though he was at the top of glory, he would never forget about the fundamentals. Zhou Zekai didn't let him down. His reaction was even faster than he had hoped. He only fired at 1-inch Ash once before focusing on Little Cold Hands. Fang Minghua could see that Little Cold Hands' back was already dyed with blood. This is how it should be. Fang Minghua felt much calmer. He immediately began doing what he was supposed to do. But then, he saw Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm had originally rushed over to Little Cold Hand's aid, but when one autumn leaf also rushed over to intercept him, he suddenly changed directions. Fang Minghua faintly realized something as Laughing Song began to run. But Lord Grimm was too quick. In the blink of an eye, Lord Grimm sealed off his escape route. So that was his true aim. Fang Minghua felt a shudder in his heart. Rescue Little Cold Hands. No. Yishu's goal had been him from the very beginning. Little Cold Hands was bait to lure away Zhou Zekai and Sun Xiang. Who did Laughing Song have to protect him? No one. Jiang Botao, Wu Qi, Sun Xiang, none of them could help him. The only one who could help was Zhou Zekai's Cloud Piercer. However, Little Cold Hands was stuck by his side. He couldn't contend against Cloud Piercer, but by sticking to his side, even just sticking his hands out and waving them around would be a form of interference. This is a trade. Fang Minghua discovered that An Wenyi had already given up on himself. He had no plans on serving. He had barely healed anyone. Instead, he used this simple and crude method to cling on to Cloud Piercer. Happy's weakest to stop Samsara's strongest. Was that Happy's strategy? Was this Tianji's horse race? Then, by using the opportunity that An Wenyi opened up, Happy would attack Laughing Song, and both healers would be eliminated. Fang Minghua knew that Happy was more than willing to trade healers. He wasn't being conceited. He was no doubt superior to An Wenyi as a healer. He had this confidence. In fact, every pro healer would have this confidence. That was why Samsara had intentionally ignored Anwenyi, because even if Anwenyi was given free rein, he wouldn't do better than Fang Minghua. In Samsara's eyes, there was no risk to doing this. How could they have expected Anwenyi to not be a healer when he was given free rein? He unexpectedly became an attacker, an extraordinarily weak attacker. Samsara ignoring him suddenly became his stage to shine. WuxRWorldAudio.com. Unfortunately, his attack was like a shooting star. In just a flash, it faded away. But in the end, he was able to change the situation. Then, Happy seemed to no longer have any use for him. Happy was clear that in a battle of healers, Anwenyi would lose to Fang Minghua. As a result, they abandoned him to trade for Fang Minghua. Today, Little Cold Hand's identity as a healer was a bait. He shone brilliantly for an instant before fading away, and by doing this, he was going to drag down Samsara's healer with him. I won't let you have your way. Fang Minghua had Laughing Song retreat to get as much distance between himself and Lord Grimm. His teammates had noticed what was going on. They would certainly try and help him. They knew that this trade wasn't worth it. It wasn't just the difference in value between healers. Without Fang Minghua, Samsara had no healer. However, without Anwenyi, Happy still had Yishu and his Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm's healing capabilities weren't great, and as the team's main attacker, Yishu couldn't sacrifice too many of his offensive stats to strengthen Lord Grimm's healing. He might not be a great healer, but he could heal at crucial moments, which could potentially save a life. In terms of technique, while every pro healer could dare to say that they were better than Anwenyi, no one would dare to say they were better than Yishu. Stall and wait for help. This was Fang Minghua's plan. He had a skill ready to be used as Lord Grimm closed in. Fang Minghua could feel his palms sweat. He knew Yishu's terror, which meant that he was even more careful with how he timed this skill. Angel's Might. A paladin skill, a forced knockback that ignored super armor. Fang Minghua wanted to rely on this skill to win more time for his team, but he needed to get the timing right. He was afraid that if he used it too early, it might not be effective, or Lord Grimm might interrupt him. He stared closely at Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm and started attacking him from afar. Fang Minghua tried his best to dodge as he endured and waited. It's time. Now. Angel's Might. It was only level 1, but in an instant, the divine protection flashed around Laughing Song and quickly spread. But Lord Grimm vanished. There was no shadow clone. It wasn't shadow clone technique. There was no trace of magic. It wasn't teleport. Even if he used those movement skills, he might not be able to escape. Those were displacement skills, but Angel's Might was an AoE, no. Where did he go? Fang Minghua felt a chill. He suddenly realized a possibility. In the center of the spreading light, Lord Grimm tunneled through the earth from beneath Laughing Song, Ninjutsu, underground tunneling technique, end chapter. The King's Avatar, Chapter 1691 Flexibility, audio source, WuxRWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1691, Flexibility. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Peng. Laughing Song's neck was split open. Lord Grimm had given a solid cut. But no matter how bad it looked, since this was a level 1 skill, its damage wasn't high. The purpose of the skill wasn't the damage, though. Lord Grimm had used the underground effect to avoid Angel's Might, allowing him to close the distance on Laughing Song. Not good. Fang Minghua immediately thought. In reality, Laughing Song was still quite healthy, and although the enemy ace had closed in on him, it wasn't a fatal situation. His team could still rescue him. Fang Minghua understood this reasoning, but he couldn't control the sense of Chris rising in his heart. It was as if Lord Grimm had given Laughing Song a fatal blow. This was pressure. Even if he had won 2 championships, when Yi Xiu's Lord Grimm got close, Fang Minghua could still feel the stifling pressure bearing down on him. He wanted to hurry and get away. He wanted to hurry and find a way to get to his team. He hastily looked around, but his eyes were already facing the sky. Lord Grimm quickly followed with another attack. After underground tunneling technique was a knock-up skill, launching Laughing Song into the air. This didn't mean that Fang Minghua had to give up on his original plans. He could still observe the surroundings and make decisions while in the air. Fang Minghua hastily adjusted his view, but as soon as he turned, the ground was now rapidly retreating away along with the sword pressed against Laughing Song's stomach. Colliding stab. Before Laughing Song was fully airborne, Lord Grimm attacked. By doing this, with Laughing Song's feet off the ground, the knockback from colliding stab would be at its fastest and its farthest. Where is he taking me? Fang Minghua quickly thought. The damage from colliding stab wasn't significant. It was also rarely used as part of a combo. It had 2 main uses. Its first use was as a movement skill. The second use was to displace the opponent. In a team competition, its second usage was more commonly seen. When focusing on a certain target, you always wanted to bring the target to an appropriate location. Including the underground tunneling technique, Lord Grimm had only used a total of 2 skills before coming out with colliding stab. Along with the fact that was still in the air, it definitely seemed like Yi Xiu was taking him somewhere. Is Happy planning on focusing me? Fang Minghua felt that it seemed unlikely. From what he remembered, Happy didn't have anyone nearby who could get to him. Unless they planned on forcing their way over. So that's their plan. Fang Minghua couldn't help but look around again. He quickly noticed another figure coming into view. From afar, Dancing Rain had thrown a burning beacon onto him. The mushroom cloud from the heat-seeking missile instantly engulfed him, but during this process, Lord Grimm took care of him very dearly. He didn't let Laughing Song get sent flying away from the shockwave. But honestly, Fang Minghua didn't want Yi Xiu's concern for him. He could understand Suma Chung providing support with an attack over here, but soon after the dense smoke dispersed, a red shadow flickered in front of him. Soft Mist. With help from Suma Chung, Tang Ro had been fighting against Jiang Botao and Wu Qi, yet in the blink of an eye, she had reached Laughing Song. This was an aggression without regard for anything else. But because of this, Fang Minghua wasn't as flustered as before. Happy's sudden shift in targets was rather crude. Happy had directly left Jiang Botao and Wu Qi open. The 2 of them weren't outside bystanders. They would quickly be in pursuit. The balance wasn't so easily grasped. Just when he was thinking this, he saw Jiang Botao's empty waves and Wu Qi's cruel silence close behind Soft Mist, not giving an inch to her. But soon afterwards, the distance between them suddenly widened. Dragon breaks the ranks. Soft Mist suddenly used this high-level skill. Laughing Song was still airborne, and Yi Xiu's Lord Grimm was still taking care of him. There was no way he could dodge this attack. Suddenly, he was sent flying into the air again. Soft Mist instantly closed in onto Laughing Song. Yi Xiu's Lord Grimm followed close behind with a Xing cut. They wanted to avoid Samsara's rescue team. Fang Minghua saw through it, but wasn't being too naive. Jiang Botao's empty waves had fewer movement options, so the distance between them widened by quite a bit. But Wu Qi's cruel silence was an assassin, the best out of all 24 classes in terms of mobility. He immediately went in pursuit with a Xing cut. Then, he activated swift movements and sprinted. It wouldn't take long for him to catch up. Laughing Song could completely survive until then. After all, Happy was mainly trying to move him away. Their DPS wasn't nearly as high as it could be. Right when Soft Mist's Dragon Breaks the Ranks ended, Laughing Song was picked up by Lord Grimm. Fling. WushOurWorldAudio.com. Laughing Song was thrown out. What? Fang Minghua was puzzled. Then, he saw magic ripple outwards from Soft Mist. Then, she blinked away. Teleport. Soft Mist teleported to where Laughing Song would fall and then followed with an attack. Cruel Silence, who was just about to catch up, was suddenly thrown behind, let alone Jiang Botao, who was even farther away. He was even farther away than Sun Xiang's One Autumn Leaf. This isn't good. Fang Minghua was startled by Yi Xiu's and Tang Rou's practiced coordination. This meant that the two weren't doing this on the spur of the moment. Happy had practiced this tactic before. This was a setup. Anyone with a bit of experience would understand. Oftentimes, pre-planned setups couldn't keep up with the constant changes of a match, but if this sort of setup was able to be implemented smoothly, the other side would always have the upper hand. From the coordination between Yi Xiu and Tang Rou and the interference towards the pursuers from Su Mucheng, he could see hints of it. Happy wasn't recklessly charging at him. They were planning on moving him around until he died. As soon as he thought of this, he looked at the two characters carrying out this task. Lord Grimm didn't need to be mentioned. With so many movement skills at his disposal, his unspecialized sat comfortably as king in terms of mobility. As for Soft Mist, he could see the buff from the neutral chasers around her legs, drastically increasing her movement speed. Sun Xiang's One Autumn Leaf had been left in the dust because he didn't have the buff from neutral chasers. Bad. Happy's tactic was bad news for them. End chapter.